The One-Armed Journals. Chapter 1. Spare the Dying. I don't remember much from what happened, I thought, laying on that cold, wet beach. The licking tide against my bare, bloodied feet. Dry. My mouth is so dry. My eyes dried and bloodshot, stinging from the salted air that breezed over my face, searing my cracked, dry lips crusted with the remnants of dry blood. I lay, vacant, unwilling to move, from exhaustion or just pure lack of will to survive. This is where I'll die. I could feel the uneven rock formation on my lower back, a feeling any normal person would quickly remove by rolling over or just reaching under and removing the stones. Even someone in my physical condition would make it their priority to move and die somewhere more comfortable. Maybe with the setting Peranthian sun lightly kissing their face, or the glow of the moon Rian dancing on the waves of the ocean, to see a final vision of a beautiful world before nothingness, before the endless void, welcoming the feathered mother to carry my soul to the veil. But I will not be granting myself this luxury. A man who doesn't remember his name, where he came from, or why he was here, or even where here was. It certainly wasn't the veil. Tales passed down of what was promised to those transported by the feathered mother to the veil had been preached in the streets to any passerby foolish enough to listen or be brainwashed into attending sermons at the pitched tents these travelling faith salesmen had erected in the towns and city centres across Jamoria. Foolish commoners thinking that the idea of a promised sanctuary upon their devotion and therefore a visceral destruction of their own soul and conscience would save them. Sheep led to slaughter by the wolves themselves. How long have I been lying here? An hour? A day? Weeks? I'm positive the same flock of scavenging seagulls have circled me multiple times, like the gears winding in a clock, time slowly passing until it eventually stops, and they pick the flesh off my bones clean, leaving nothing but a vessel of calcium and marrow for a passerby's dog to carry off and bury in the sand. The only funeral fitting for whoever I am. Time dragged its way along. The day turned to night. The once clear sky illuminated by the setting sun, burning the sky in a collage of orange and red, woven through Nessus's veil. What the faith salesman would call the opening of the gateway. This transition from day to night, when the lost souls of those gone from this world are transported by our feathered mother into the embrace of the veil, to walk amongst Nessus and her flock of archangels, to live with such power and grace, to never feel fading or decay, to maybe, for once, be at peace. This beautiful scape was soon covered by the convergence of greying clouds that soon turned to black. A rumbling echoed through the sky, until, with the vivifying prowess of a rising drum roll, droplets of rain began to fall, turning quickly into a torrent. No wind to push the rain across, it fell, and it fell hard. Each drop pierced me like 1,000 tiny arrows, never drawing blood but wanting to tear my skin to shreds. Cold water collected around me, running down along the outline of my body as if to create a memorial of myself in the sand for those who would wish to mourn. it ran back towards its elder body of water. The cycle of ocean to vapour to collection to falling. Then it starts all over again. I watched it run, wishing I was being dragged along with it, dragged into the murky depths of Harmonia's domain, to be devoured by her titan, to fuel the rage of the sea. A few seconds passed before I noticed the water's hue began to change. The clear, ice-cold rain water that smoothed and slid along the sand. The clearness began to thicken and darken. A thick colour of crimson red diluted itself into the running water. Blood. This was blood. My blood. Bleeding. How could I be bleeding? I suppose actually the likeliness of me bleeding, considering my current situation, would be that much of a surprise. But this was too much blood. Like the gutter of a butcher's after a fresh delivery of animal carcass. Washing away into the filth-ridden streets to be stepped on by the working man's boot, or be drowned in the drunkard's piss. Had I been butchered like some produce, ready to be laid upon a table with an apple forced into my mouth as some sort of centerpiece? No. If I was to be slaughtered, to be eaten, the wolves would have left nothing but the scraps of cloth that could now no longer be referred to as my attire. My dirtied, soaked tunic, the dark blues with trims of silver muddied by the sand, parts washed clean by the rain bar the lingering of ocean life clinging to me, the seaweed and discarded shells of the ocean's creatures. My coat was finely detailed with golden thread embroidery depicting a collage of interlocking swirls and waves, meeting in the middle and woven through the buttonholes. A couple of my ornate buttons were missing, probably torn off in the crushing waves. I doubt any self-respecting thief would tear off only 2 or 3 buttons and leave me for dead. They'd be sure to take anything they could get their grubby ferret hands on and finish the job. But 2 buttons remained, embossed with a crest, a winged serpent, its side profile with the wings from its back following the curve of the buttons. A household crest, a maker's mark, or perhaps just some novelty design. I muster what little strength I can manage in my neck, throwing it to one side. The heaviness of my damp and sand-covered head fell hard to the right, slamming into a smooth grey stone cracking against my temple. The pain shot through my head, vibrating. A piercing sound echoed through my ears, my eyes stinking worse than before. Then, for a brief moment, images flashed through my head, like a shadow puppet's performance, unclear and silhouetted. Visions of a mighty blade thrust through my chest, a large toothed grin enveloped in flame and stone, a bandaged face covering the eyes but seeping through the fabric of his bindings, smoke, black as tar. Flecks of embers dancing in the smoke, and just a single spoken phrase. Farewell, child of night. Flashing back to consciousness, I gasped, breathing in some grains of the wet sand, the sand getting caught in my throat, choking and sputtering it out. I opened my eyes slowly, my dry, crusted skin restricting my eyelids, feeling the skin almost tear itself along my eye. I looked to my right arm, the dark blue sleeve from shoulder draping down across the silver trim, following straight along my shoulder line, then stopping. The blue fabric was torn and fraying, smothered in sand, water and blood. The fabric from the elbow was torn and lay upon the sand. Flat. It was gone. Everything from my elbow onwards was gone. This was the mouth of the red-crimson river that had become mixed with the flowing rainwater. The blood still pouring. Stunned, I opened my mouth, trying to scream, but I couldn't muster a sound. The grating air against my throat felt like it was about to tear itself in two, and I would lie here choking on my own blood, if bleeding out didn't happen first. I'm going to die here. A nobody. Broken. Incomplete. A shadow of whoever I used to be. What's the point? I'm all alone out here. I look up once more to the darkened sky, the creeping light of Rianne poking through. Rain falling onto my face and into my eyes. I didn't wince or blink, allowing the rain to fall, seeping into my ducts to hide the possibility of crying. I won't allow my final moments here to be filled with tears. I only wish I knew who I was, who had torn off my arm. Who was the flame-mouthed creature that had plunged his blade into my chest? And what did he mean by child of night? Questions I would never know the answer to. My peripherals began to fade. Like an oil painting in the rain, the sky began to blur and fade away. This is it. Under and over, once more we roam. Feathered mother, carry us home. Do not be far. Do not leave us scared and frail. Walk hand in hand with us to Nessus's vale. Good night. And the void takes me. Pursue. A voice echoed through my head. My eyes shot open to the falling rain, this voice soft and deep like a calming warmth, as if my consciousness was slipping into a hot bath. What? I called out, hoping that it had been someone on the beach coming to my aid. I tried to turn my head to look around me for any sign of someone being there. Pursue. The voice called again, this time distant but still soft and warm. Pursue? Pursue what? I strained again, trying to look around, managing to only drag my head through the sand, piling it up against my cheek, the small grains of sand sticking to my eyelashes and my hair. My hair, long and scraggy, matted from the salt water and sand and all manner of sea life. What was once a pure white had changed to a white and black ombre. From what I could see, that had found itself bunched up in the sand when I shifted my head. The ends of my hair had become this ebony black that slowly faded upwards to this ashen grey before rejoining with the pure white roots. Again, looking around, I was truly alone. Still slowly bleeding out, the numbness setting in, possibly due to the cold rainwater and temperature of the night. I gathered that some form of ailment was to befall me if I didn't get out of this rain. But what could I do? I had come to the acceptance of dying here, almost embracing it like an old friend. Where had this sudden urge to survive clawed its way up from? Pursue? Is that what he meant, the voice to go on living, to find the answers to all this? The voice of the feathered mother has told me it is not my time. I will get my answers. I will not die here today, nor will I die tomorrow. Not till the suns have stopped setting and the moon has stopped lighting our way in darkness. The hand on my left arm twitches, straining, trying to close, my joints rusted from the lack of blood reaching them. Doesn't matter. I tell myself, making a wide, sweeping motion with my arm, hearing the pops and creaks of my joints grinding against themselves. I dig my heels deep into the wet sand, the small stones opening up the wounds on my heels and base of my feet. The salt and sand stinging these freshly opened cuts. Letting out this ferocious scream of pain and determination, I fling my arm across my body, trying to use the momentum to roll me onto my front, praying the added pressure of my body on my removed arm would hopefully restrict the ever-escaping blood. As my arm is thrown across my body, a loud pop is heard. Dislocating my arm from its socket, it falls limply across my body. Screaming much louder than before, the veins on my neck pulsing, raised and swollen. Sputters of blood from my mouth follow, tearing up my throat with every scream. No, 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 I won't lose. I won't die. I lay flat on my back, digging my heels in once more. Arching my back, I fling myself forward, upwards. As though someone had snapped a handful of celery, my back responded in kind. Each vertebrate and disc slotting itself in and out of place, I gritted my teeth as hard as I could, still leaking small pools of blood through the gaps in my teeth. I did everything I could not to scream again. The damage would soon become irreversible. With a final pull, I managed to sit myself up. A large gout of blood burst from my missing arm. My surroundings were starting to become blurry again. A whirling pool of just colour and shapes. Unable to tell where the land ended and the ocean began. The horizon is no longer a clear split between sky and sea. My body feebly swayed side to side. My hair sticking to my face, clotting itself in the blood pouring down my chin. Wearily I spotted out the corner of my eye next to me a large flat stone, larger than the one I had seen on my right when I knocked my head against it. It took a few attempts, but I managed to swing my body to lift my dislocated arm up onto that flat stone. I breathed in, shuffling to align myself with my arm and the rock. I don't know how many times I can fail at this. Here we go. Breathing deeply and holding my breath, the teeth clamped shut so as not to bite my tongue. I raise and slam my shoulder against my arm. Crack. Bone hitting bone. The joint of my shoulder colliding with my arm. It sent a reverberation shooting through my body. My legs and feet tingled. Again, I said to myself. Repositioning, I rose. Thud. The arm slipping from under me as the shoulder again collided with my arm. My face hitting the stone slab, my nose crushed between the stone and my head. Another pool of blood began to paint its way onto the stone. Again! Breathing heavily, my vision seconds away from depleting completely. Seconds away from passing out. Seconds away from death. Using my forehead and pushing myself back up to sitting, the arm is laid out. Blackened and bruised. The final alignment. Together we rise, and together we shall fall. Screaming, I rose and forced myself down, the satisfying albeit painful sound of my arms slotting back into place. We weren't dead yet, but we were still on this god-forsaken beach. Finally, for the first time, we could see our surroundings relatively clearly. The beach curved, welcoming the ocean into a crescent bay. Edging the beach, large embankments of long grass and tree stumps. Twisting myself around, behind me, some 50 feet away, was a small stone pathway that curved up the embankments to what I could only assume was a main road. There. That is where I need to get to. And someone is bound to find me. Wishful thinking, I know. For the first time I reach over and lift up the wet, bloody remains of my tunic sleeve and stare blankly at the carnage that had become my arm. This was not a clean cut, not surgical and precise. I think even a beggar with a rusted knife would have made a cleaner cut. No, this was torn from me. Torn away like tender meat off the bone, leaving behind scraps of tendons and skin and muscle tissue loosely flapping in the breeze. The bone completely shattered, forming jagged spikes of bone. The bones acting as an aqueduct, funneling my blood out onto the sand below. I reach down to my waist and unbuckle my black leather belt with a gold buckle. Tourniquet. That's what I'll need. I thread the belt through itself and slide it to the highest points on the remnants of my arm. Pulling the belt tight, I lock the pins into place. A brief spluttering of blood from the wound before the flowing becomes nothing but drips. Tidying up the binding, I roll over onto my knees. They sink about an inch into the wet sand. Leaning forward using my only capable hand for support, I slide both feet under my body, dragging grooves in the sand behind me. Planting them under my body and lifting my knees to my chest, they are shaking, unable to take my weight. I push down hard, forcing what dwindling energy I have left into my legs to get me upright. I rose, swaying side to side, the rush of altitude dizzying my senses. I plant one foot forward and immediately keel over, falling once again face first into the sand. Lifting my head up, my face caked in sand and blood like some hideous seaside mime. It came very quickly to me that walking would not be an option in this state. So crawling it would have to be. I dig my nails into the sand, pulling myself along. The wet sand providing ample support for me to get a good grip on the earth and move myself forward, even if with every pull I was bringing more and more sand into my way than the distance I was covering. I reached forward again and again, inch by inch, I made my way up the beach, experiencing lapses in vision after every third pull. It felt like hours, chipping our way up the beach, before finally I felt stone on my fingertips. My hand slapped on the wet stone. It could have just been a piece of the beach, sort of like the stone I had injured myself on or the one I repaired my dislocated shoulder with. But this was different. It was cut stone. I could tell by the grooves in the slabs, feel where the mortar had joined the other stones together. I had made it off the beach. A smile. For the first time this evening, I smiled. I felt more alive than ever before. I had staved off death. I had willed myself to survive. But as the smile faded, so too did my vision. The sky rolled and the land rose. as my head made contact with the stone slabs of the stairs to my salvation. Perhaps this was the Vale. These weren't the stairs to the main road. These were the stairs to the gates of the Vale, and I had been chosen to become an archangel beside the feathered mother. My vision turned to black, and the soundscape around me faded to white noise. Except one sound. The soft sound of spoken word. For before the darkness took me, I heard a voice. "Well, what do we have here then?"